G'day guys, welcome back to Off-Road Crusader. Welcome to episode 2 of a build series about building your own DIY rear drawers for your car. This episode is going to be all about construction. The previous one was about sort of designing, proof of concept, that sort of thing. Just to sort of come up with your ideas and get your components together and figure out what you want to do. This episode is going to be all about construction. Now, when I'm talking construction, obviously it's going to vary depending on your material choice that you've decided to go with. My personal preference is plywood. It is cheap, it is easy to work with, it's plentiful, you can get it in a bunch of different sizes and thicknesses, and it's fairly forgiving to work with as well. So that's my choice to work with. There is also, you can work with steel or aluminium or even some plastics, some like polymer plastics you can use, but this is my material of choice. As such, construction is mainly going to be focused around how I go about building with plywood to make it strong and to get square cuts as best I can. So the first thing I've done, which you can see here, is build up your base platform for your drawers. I would highly recommend doing this. You don't 100% need to, because essentially if your mounting points are strong enough, you don't need a base. But it is a hugely beneficial process to go through to build a floor and work around that, because you will find there are discrepancies between all of your drawings and all of your measurements versus actually the physical thing. For example, when I drew up and designed the rear drawer setup and the floor plan for it, it was basically based off the measurements and everything in there. When I went and built this, I realized that the wheel arches left and right are slightly different shape. The mounting points I was originally going to use are basically going to be buried underneath the walls of the drawers and everything, so they're not going to work, so I needed to find different mounting points. Also, this rear section, which I'm not sure if it shows up on camera, but actually drops down a section. I was going to drop this further, however the slope where you get to the back of the drawers and then it comes down towards where the back of the rear seats are is on a very slight slope, and to fully get the panel as low as it can go, you would then need to have a section where it would take up, you'd have a slope coming back upwards to meet with it, and that would dig into the amount of room I have for storage. So I've gone with this solution. I've made these sort of bracing arms to hold everything in place. They're glued and screwed there. I'll put up a picture to show you exactly what they look like. And I've screwed them from underneath and obviously put the PVA glue and stuff under there. I'm no carpenter, I'm no cabinet maker. This is just what I've done that I find that works. If you are a carpenter, cabinet maker, you do this for a living, please let me know in the comments of everything I've done wrong, and I would love to learn how to do it properly. And I'm sure the audience as well, and there you go, you guys would love to know as well. So look, you got any hints or tips of things you see me doing along the way, feel free to drop them. I'm not mad, I'm new to this, but also I have some experience, and I think that's worth sharing, and a lot of people will get very far on the experience that I share versus teaching a TAFE course on how to work with wood. So this is how I do it. It's worked really well. Follow along. Let's learn together. So today's mission is going to be to build the uprights and sort of start on the drawer setup. The main one's going to be in the center here, because this is basically going to divide where my fridge is going to go and where my rear drawer setup is going to go as well. I basically want to do this so that I can sort of get my heights all right. I'm also going to be tying it into the rear quarter plastics in the back of the 200. I'm going to tap into that and basically have a platform to match up to that. And it's then going to screw into those plastics and sort of square everything up, if that makes sense. We're also going to work on the mounting system for it as well. Underneath where the tie-down points are in the center for when the rear seats fold down, there are 2 bolts either side around sort of midway. You can see these blue squares here. And those ones there, they're big like M12 bolts, like they're real big strong bolts. I'm going to tap into probably 4 of those. So I'm going to make a big square. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to provide all the sort of downward mounting for the rear drawers. There are also two other mounting bolts that come in from the side. So these hold the rear seats to the car. They sit around here. They come in at that sort of angle. And as such, I've got two lines here, two green lines. And those ones there are like the center lines of where those are going to be. I'm going to build L brackets. They're going to come up like that. And then a bolt's going to come through like that and meet up there. And that's going to give me a lot more lateral strength in terms of where the drawers sit. So 6 bolts to hold this in place, I think is going to be plenty. I'm also going to be working out how I'm going to be securing my battery as well as the water tank, because obviously the water tank is going to be quite a tall object. It's going to be about 40 kilos. You know, you can imagine the amount of movement that's going to have in that. It's going to have the back of the drawer is going to be most of where the mounting is going to be for it, and that's going to try and pull it backwards. I'm going to make some feet for it so that it can't move left and right, and then I'll just figure out how to stop it moving that way and everywhere else it could go. I don't want it flying around, I don't want it moving, so it needs to be securely mounted. But to do that, I really want to get these walls in place so that I can then sort of start to figure out those sorts of things. And that's the thing to remember about this process of building your own drawers. If you haven't done it before, if it's not sort of just an off-the-shelf product, you're doing the R&D, you know, you're doing the research and development, you're figuring out how this is going to work. And sometimes on a piece of paper, you can't know 100% of how it's going to work until you start building it. So I think it's very important to make this design and construction process a reciprocal process. You are always designing something, then constructing something, then designing something. And if you go through in those small steps, you will end up with a product that will work really well. The tools I'm using for this, I've literally just got myself a jigsaw. This is a Ryobi one. I'm just using a sort of medium cut blade on it as well for cutting through this plywood. I don't need to make it look like an absolute work of art. Most of the timber is going to be covered with carpet, so you're never going to see it. But I also don't want a big rough finish where it's sort of pulling apart the plywood as I'm trying to cut it. So I've got that for doing most of my cuts. I've obviously got a square right angle for getting everything nice and square the best to my ability. A drill, you're going to need a drill for drilling in your holes and for putting your screws in, all the rest of it. A assortment of drill bits of what's going to work best for you. Personally, the screws I'm using are like 10 gauge, I think it is the terminology for it. Basically means they're quite thick and the flutes of the thread are quite wide and it grabs onto the wood really well, but it's not so wide that it's going to basically pull the plywood apart, because you've only got 12 mil to play with. And basically when you want the screw in there, you do want some meat on either side of that screw that it can hold onto. So that's what I've decided to use. Got a steel rule, you got some pens, basically anything you're going to use to do arts and crafts. I think it also is really handy just to have some offcuts of 12 mil ply in this instance, because it's really nice to be able to figure, okay, if my wall's going to be this thickness, and you can physically put some plywood there, you draw out the thickness of where that's going to be, and that can sort of help you space things and get them correct. It's also really good if you need to figure out, you know, for example, the height difference. So it's, you know, 1, 2, 3 heights of 12 mil ply, and you can go from there to fill them in. So the first step of what we're going to do today is to build the box section of where the drawer is going to go. For that, I'm going to build an upright this way and an upright this way. That way I can sort of match them up on the bench before applying them to the base panel of here. That will really help with the strength of it, because obviously as I'm pulling this in and out of the car, I don't want it to be flopping around and breaking the screws and all the rest of it. So we're going to be building that. And then I think we're going to work on the mounting and then probably look at, I don't know, we'll see where we go from there. Follow along.
Inches later.
All right, we're back in the shed a few days later than where I last took off, but I wanted to get some things done. Would have been boring footage for you guys to watch it, but lots of sort of R&D testing and seeing what works and what doesn't, but thought I'd show off some bits and pieces now. So you can see there, that box is already done. I've gone through what we're doing there. That's mainly to get sort of the gauge of the size of this thing. The main thing that took me a little while was the battery tray and how I'm going to hold that in. I was going to get just like a steel battery tray to bolt down to that, but then it was just, you know, adding extra weight. So this is here, this enclosure holds the battery. Make sure it doesn't move left and right, forward and back. All I have to worry about is up and down movement, and that is held in by this bit of webbing here. So that one there, screwed on that side, nice and firm, it's not gone anywhere. On the other side, this little bolt going through the webbing twice with a washer, nice big washer. That purchases onto this one here, which is a little T-nut. These are such a cool little device. I wish I'd used them sooner on other projects. But essentially, you can see it there. The idea of this to go, that center section goes through the wood, and then when you do the bolt up, it actually pulls those teeth into the timber and holds it steady. You need to do this on the opposite side of where the bolt will go, and then it sort of uses that clamping force to hold it into the wood. Yeah, obviously you wouldn't do it on the other side, it just falls straight out, but really, really cool little device. The one I've been using M6s, and then there's a larger one as well down here, which is an M10. Obviously you drill different holes for different things. That sort of secures the battery, that's not going anywhere. The water tank was the next big one. So there it is, water tank's in. I've built this sort of stopper just to sort of, you know, give it a good sort of purchase to not move any further, so I know exactly where it's going to go. And then the idea being that these tie down points would allow you to run a strap over the top, and on the other side you can see they've got indentations for the straps to go. I've just tested it, and in theory it should work fine, but it's not really giving a lot of support. Like the tank can still move around a little bit. Obviously it's not going to run off, but it had too much movement in it and I'm not really happy with it. So my next solution is that big M10 nut there, but using this. So this is a M10 by 100mm bolt to go all the way through and meet up with that captive nut. I've then got 3 shock absorber like pin mount busher things. These ones are from old suspension out of the Prado. Obviously you wouldn't throw them back in the car, but I've kept a few of them around because you never know when you need them. And here's a good example. So these are just a little bit small to fit through these holes, as in you can push them through. If I space out 3 of them, I've got 3 there, plus I've got a large, this big metal plate here, which I had just sitting around. I've just shaved it down to make it so it's nice and smooth. That sort of locks it into place like that, and then I do up this bolt, and essentially these rubber bushers expand a little bit, lock into that hole, and then the whole thing pulls the water tank into that spot there and locks it into position. When I tested it, it's stupidly strong. Was very, very surprised at how sturdy it was. So that's going to go in, that's going to be mounted through there to hold that bottom bit. Unfortunately, the 2 top holes don't really line up with anything I can use. The bottom one, I'm not 100% sure that's going to line up with any timber I'm going to use as of yet, because if I want to leave the opening there for the fridge. So the middle one, I'm also going to use as a tie down point. Similar contraption to that, going to build another one. So essentially you're going to have this one with a bolt in it, that one with a bolt in it, and then on the end there, I'm going to still use these tie down points, put the strapping over the top, and that's just going to provide a little bit of extra strength. I think even just the 2 bolts would be enough, but I want to add the last one there. So look, I'm going to keep working on this, and I will jump back to you guys when I've got some more stuff to show. Look at this, so good. This is the furthest I've been so far. Got the actual fridge enclosure all done. You can see I've left a big cutout at the back, and on the side there as well, that's where the vents are for the ARB fridge. Most fridges will have it in the same spot. You can see with the water tank on, I'm not using the second strap, I'm only using one. There's the bolt hole coming out one side, and on the other there, you can see as this has come around, I've just used these little angle brackets to hold this side on. That way if I need to, I can just remove one side like the fridge side when eventually I do upgrade the fridge. So very impressed with that. I'm super keen to see it get this far. And then around here, that's the back view. So battery, we've already gone through that. There's the 2 sort of mounting bolts that I've done to hold that in place. They're the only actual spots where I've got some meat to put some nutserts in. and then just that one strap, but really the strap is not doing a hell of a lot, so I may end up just removing it for simplicity's sake, because those 2 bolts are really sturdy and I'd be very surprised if it moved from there. So I think that's going to be about it for today. Going to come back tomorrow and hopefully do some more of the mounts and get ready to start building the drawers themselves.
3 weeks later.
And we're back. G'day guys, welcome back to the shed. Today we're going to be installing the drawer runners into the drawer enclosure. I've already built it. It's just behind the camera there. I'm not letting you see it just yet, but we're going to be installing them. These are what I've chosen. They're 800mm long. They're just a standard heavy duty drawer runner, 90 kilo capacity. I bought these from Bunnings. They're relatively cheap and also easy to install. There's the box for them if you want to chase these down and get your own ones there, just from Bunnings here in Australia. These ones here, they're obviously, I'm never going to use that in full 90 kilo capacity, but it's good to know it's there. They need to be mounted fairly securely. I'm going to be using these T-nuts that I've shown you previously with the water tank install. Those are M6. They're going to be installed into the wood panels on either side, and then bolts going through to secure it to the actual wood. The drawer setup I'm going with is essentially I've got my fridge on, well, this side from your point of view, and then the drawers on this side here, and there's going to be 2 of them stacked on top of each other. The top one's going to be pretty standard. You would have seen that before. It's just a normal drawer to come in and out. The drawer slides themselves have no locking open or locking closed mechanism. They've got a bit of a sort of catch to hold them open, but I think if you were to park with the car sort of with the nose up the hill, open the back door, these will just come sliding out when they're full of gear. So I've got these latches here. You've already seen these before. I've shown you these. There we go. These are going to hold the drawer closed when it is in the closed position, and then when you open it, obviously the runners will just allow it to come out. I think that's sufficient. That's what I'm going to do with my drawer install. The top one's going to be as you'd really expect from a drawer. The bottom section, I'm actually going to have a separate bench space, which is going to come out from the bottom of that drawer. I think you'll have to wait and see it actually in the car to know what I'm talking about, but I had this little idea and I thought I'd give it a go using some of these. So these ones here are some extra drawer runners, 550mm long, and these ones actually are like a push to open type of drawer runner. It obviously has its own sort of mechanism to hold itself closed, but the benefit being I don't need to add a handle. You actually push on that surface face of where this table's going to come out, and the table will come out towards you. Table's only going to be about 20-25mm thick, and I've got some nice wood coming to that from a lovely supporter of the show. So thank you very much, Michael, for supplying those well, I suppose by the time this comes out, you already know about it, so all good. So that's going to be happening. There's a little bit happening with that bottom drawer, but I want to get the main runners into the drawer enclosure, and then I can more accurately size up the actual drawer boxes themselves and start to sort of design everything else that needs to go around that. So we're going to jump straight into showing you how I'm going to go ahead and do it, how I'm going to use those T-nuts to secure the drawer runners themselves, and hopefully today we'll actually have some sort of drawer box up and I can show you what the design's going to look like. Rightio, here we are. Drawer box is all built up, ready to go. That's on there nice and strong. You can see here I've already marked out a few different lines, and these are going to be essentially markings that help me to figure out exactly where this drawer runner needs to go. So this blue line here, that's the midpoint of where I'm going to have the 2 drawers. So obviously there's going to be a top drawer above that and the lower drawer below that. This one here, this blue line shows me the bottom of where I want that drawer runner to be, and this black line is actually the center line for where I want to have my mounting screws. All these measurements you'll have to figure out exactly how you want to do them, or how that's going to work in your setup. But for me, I've measured it out and it's going to work great for this application. So from here, we then need to obviously figure out this center line, get it drawn as best we can, nice and straight. Make sure you get yourself a little right angle, just so you can make sure all these lines are going to be square and perpendicular with the actual drawer face. The front face, which is this bit here, and that's going to be mounted along there. So what I want to do is basically find the center line for where all these mounting points are going to go, measure out exactly where these holes are going to be drilled. So for example, on here I've got 35mm for my front mounting hole, and then the next one down I'm going to probably grab that one here, so it's 1331mm, I'd call that, and then we're going to transfer it onto there. So we're going to have our 30mm, make sure it's nice and square, so we've got 30mm there, and we've got 13.1. Once those are marked out, we're going to drill our hole for our T-nuts to go through. The drill size that I'm using for that is a 7.5 mil. It gives a really nice snug hole for that T-nut to sit in, and then we can install our T-nuts. I'm basically going to do the first one on the outside here, get that installed, drill and install that one, and then make sure that when I bolt this in, I can then just lift the back end up and put that extra bolt in. Boom. There we go, and that's our T-nut installed there. Now when I want to, I can actually just hold that up, put my bolt through on that side, pick up that threaded hole, and then just screw right in. The benefit of the little collar that pulls into the wood as well is that it creates this little like channel for the thread to sit on. So it tends to like square it up with the hole that you've drilled, and also with the actual teeth on the back will give you a flat surface, and then everything will be perpendicular to that. So I'm going to do the other side there, and then show you what it looks like when we install it. Now with all that done, we'll take our drawer runner. You can see it gives you this sort of access window, sort of like an access window there to obviously see where your bolts are going to go. We're going to use that. Go for the first one. These ones that I'm using are, I've got Allen key heads on them. I think it's a 4 mil. Just going to use one of those to get this thread started. There we go. Now I'm just going to put a little bit of tension on that. That's in. And there we go. One of my holes is not quite as straight and as perpendicular as it needed to be, but now those two mounts are in there. So now that that's in there, basically this whole slide has no up and down movement in it, and we can now use that to mark out exactly where the rest of our holes need to go. So now that they're all marked out, what we're going to do is just remove this drawer runner, so that way when I'm drilling holes I'm not getting extra sawdust and stuff into these runners where it's going to clog up those ball bearings. So we're going to pull that off, basically put the rest of our bolts in and screws, and then the drawer runners will be done. Wow! And just like that, we're all done. Well, the drawer runners are in anyway. I had to have a bit of a play because once I got the measuring tape out, I found that between the front and the rear there was a little bit of height difference, so I've made sure to correct that so they're all nice and square now. Now what I can do is basically measure the exact distance between the two drawer runners. So that distance there, which in my instance is about, what's that, about 418 mil, and then I can then build a base to that plus the walls to suit, which is 418 wide, and I know it's going to fit exactly between these two here. Like personally, the way that I operate with building this sort of thing is I like to do a step-by-step process, not just design everything at the start, then cut everything up and then try and make it fit. Because sometimes you find that, you know, even though the drawer runner should be 12 mil wide, they're actually 13 or 14, or they might be 10, and that obviously throws your measurements right out, and it can obviously mess with things big time. So I prefer just to build it this way. That way, look, I know the drawer runners are in. The measurement I take now is going to be the exact measurement. It's not theorized or anything like that, it's exact. So that's why I kind of choose to do it this way. I mean, you may choose to actually build the drawers themselves and then build the enclosure around it, completely up to you. But this is how I'm doing it. So all going well so far. Let's get to building some drawers. So here we are, we're starting to build the bottom drawer that's going to go in this drawer system. I've already made a bit of a start. I've measured out everything, basically done a quick diagram. You would be surprised how helpful it is sometimes just to draw out your ideas. Well, it works for me anyway, and I would highly recommend it. Some people may work in a different way, but this is what I do, and I find it really, really helps. So this is just a really basic diagram, make sure that comes up, of what the drawer system is going to be like. So you've got 800 long, we got 420 wide, and we got 220 tall. From there, it's just cool, that's a simple box. And from there, you can figure out how to do your cuts. So for example, I had a 1200 by 1200 sheet of plywood. I was able to get both 800 sheets done sort of next to each other. And then the following one along, so I only had to really cut 3 strips. And that gave me my front, my back, and my 2 sides. I am also going to have, because of the way my drawer's set up, a center divider in the drawer. Well, it's not quite, it's going to be, well, a 3/4 divider, I suppose you'd call it, quarter of the way along, and that's going to support my lift out coffee table lid. Stay tuned for that one. So essentially I need, well, I've already done one side. This side's going to go on here. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that just so I can walk through a bit of a step-by-step process. And then I need to cut another one of these, and that's going to sit about there. And then that's going to hold the structure for my lift up coffee table hinges. So the first thing I do is figure out obviously how it's all going to go together. When I measured it out, I made sure that the outsides of my drawers were going to basically be the full length, so that full 800 mil, and my ends of the drawer were going to sit within those. So obviously we're not just talking about a one-dimensional sort of piece of material. It's 12 mil thick. You know, you've got to take that into account. So I've decided that there's going to be the outside, then that between that is going to be my inside plates, and then my second 800 side plate is going to go on the top there. So that'll give me my full 420 mil dimension over that way, and my full 800 in that direction as well. I find this to be best because it also allows your screws to come up for these ones, and basically they're hidden out of the way, so they're not going to impact if you're putting a faceplate on this or something. So obviously joining timber, there's I'm showing you how I'm doing it and what I've got with the tools available. It works great. Obviously you need to take some things into consideration. If you're a carpenter or a cabinet maker, you're going to look at this and probably think it's really simple and you know, a little bit crude, but it works great and you don't need a hell of a lot of tools to do it. If you have a router, obviously you can do biscuit joining, or you can do, you know, like put a 45-degree cut on there and use that to join your timber. For me, I've only got a jigsaw and a drill, so this is how I go about doing it, just a simple butt join. So there we go. Well, this is coming up to here. So on the end, I've figured out, okay, this is where it's going to go. Using my 12 mil ply, I put that over the front and I basically draw a line on the opposite side of the timber to say, cool, that's my 1200 mil gap. I then go along and I drill 3 holes. How many holes you drill is relative to how much strength you need it. And for this, I wanted 3 holes, so I drilled 3. Maybe get away with 2, but anyway. Drilled 3 holes basically along your center line, so it's the screws have got plenty of meat on it, and that way they're sort of pre-drilled. So this way, when it sits up here, I can grab my drill from underneath to sort of give a bit of a pilot hole, and then my screws are ready to go into the wood. If you do this crooked or it's not square or whatever, obviously your screws are going to come out at a weird dicky angle. So that just takes a bit of practice, and sometimes you do need to repeat yourself if it does come off a little bit skew-whiff. I've got this basically little block of jarrah sitting behind here. This is lined up with that line that I drew, and what it does is it basically means that when I put this piece of timber up like this, I've already measured it, and this is now square. So all I need to do is basically hold this there, push it against that backing piece of timber, and this is square. So when I screw my screws up into it, it's going in good. If you try and freehand it without this thing, you can have success, but this makes it much more likely. So this is what I'm doing. Obviously between here as well, I'm using a little bit of PVA glue. So what we're going to do now is, this one hasn't been pre-drilled, is I figure out which way I want it to go. So, you know, what's still going to be the nicest face? Is it going to be the front? It's going to be the back. Also looking at how square your cuts are with the jigsaw and what you want best. It doesn't really matter in my application. This is going to be the back plate. So I'm going to put it like so, with that there, and I can sort of push it against that backing plate and make it as square as I can. Obviously I'm still freehanding it. You could probably get a second clamp actually and hold that in place, and that would stop all of this moving, but I don't, so I'm not having one. Got our drill. This is a 3 mil drill bit, and basically going up through our pilot holes, we're just going to make a bit of a start. If I drill that too much, like go too deep into this backing plate, then the screw isn't going to grip and really pull the head of the screw up into this piece of timber. So I just want to give it a bit of a spot to go into so that everything goes nicely, and that way the screw itself can bury itself in the timber as it needs. So it's just to really help to locate everything. So I'm going to get that one in there. Just mark that for now, this side here. There we go. I might just touch that one up a little bit too. There we go. Now they're all done. I'll take this drill bit out. Just get a Phillips head bit on there just to help with the screws. The screws I'm using are these, about 40 mil long. I think they're, what are they, 10 gauge or something? Which I'm pronouncing as 10 gauge because, you know, I'm calling the shots on this show. And these are going to be ready to go. So again, I'm just going to get these ready. So just screw them up from underneath, just a little bit so they'll locate with those holes that I've just drilled. Getting everything ready like this means when you do go to actually do your final screw in, there's less stuff you have to hold and worry about. So they're all ready to go. Got my PVA glue here. And I'm going to be quite liberal around all this. I'm also putting it on top of the screws, so as they go in, they're going to add that little bit of glue into the holes. and create a bit more of like a chemical bond as well as a physical bond. Anyway, so that's going to go on there. When I lower that down, it should line up with all those holes. Boom, we're in. And then I like to start with the center one. Boom, that's in. That's in. Boom, that's in. And there's our join done. Obviously, I'm just going to wipe off that little bit of PVA glue that's left over there. Remove my clamps. Get my block of wood out of the way. And there it is. I'm sorry, it's probably at about 89.5 degrees. When I put the 800mm bit on top of this, it allows you to pull all of this square. So there's that little bit of flex in it, which is just because it's timber. And once this is all in place, then you put your 800 on and you're done. You don't have to worry about getting this 110% square before you put the top on, because you can use that to manipulate it slightly. So look, that's pretty much how the joins go together. I'm just using regular old butt joins. Once I put this 800mm piece on top as well, and that way all my box is done, I then have to worry about putting the base on. For the base, I've decided to use 9mm ply, just because it's that little bit thinner. It's not reducing the weight that little bit as well. The base itself is going to be held in with a heap of screws and nails, so it's not going to be moving anywhere. And really, I mean, if you've got that much weight on the actual base, then look, you should probably take that spare gearbox out of your drawers. You're not going to use it. Most of the actual structural strength I want from this drawer, because I've got a few things hanging off of it, is in the frame itself, and that's what I want to be the strongest. So that's why I've chosen to go 12mm ply for the frame and then go 9mm for the base. For the top drawer, that's just going to be filled with light stuff. Again, if the drawer itself is at head height, I don't want to be lifting heavy stuff up into a drawer that's going to be at my head height. So it's mainly going to be bulky things which I need to store. You know, things like your bowls, your plates, might be spare gas bottles, might be spare food, you know, stuff like that, where it's not too heavy. So on the top drawer, I'm probably going to build the whole thing out of 9mm ply. But look, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. So for now, I'm going to finish this one off. When we get to the base plate, I'll show you more of that as well. And then we'll look at hooking it up to the actual drawer runners and going from there. Share a like down below if you get that reference. Another day in the shed. Today's my day of taking care of Coda, so it hasn't been a huge amount of woodwork happening, but we are getting into our little snippets of when he's asleep, when I can come down and work on things. So at the moment, the drawer itself, the lower drawer, the main drawer, is structurally all there. I've added this divider, which basically separates where I'm going to have my lift out table and my little slide out table. And then there's going to be a storage pocket at the back there for, I think the gas canisters, like little propane canisters I use, are probably going to be the best thing in the back there, but I will fill it when it's all done and see what fits. So the idea being that the lower portion of this drawer, this face, you should be able to just give it a little push. It is going to be attached to these drawer runners, push slides. You push them on, boom, out comes your table. Only downside to that is you then need to cut your access hole into that. These are 45mm tall, so I'm allowing a 50mm hole, just it gives that little bit of extra space so I can run things around. And basically I want to cut this out in a nice rounded sort of pattern. So what I've done there is basically drawn out exactly the amount of space I need, and then used a nut that I had laying around and trace that as sort of the radiuses for the corners. What I'll then do is get my step drill out and I'll drill those circles as big as they need to be, and then you can just join all the lines with your jigsaw, and Bob's your uncle, or you know, probably under a different name, because you know everyone has an uncle. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to cut those out. Once those are out of the way, I can install those these drawer slides, because you need to actually extend them to be able to get to all your holes. And at the moment I can't do that because there's a big patch in the way. So we're going to get the drill out, get the jigsaw out, and start chopping this into bits. Your little guest in our backyard this morning. Hey, what are you doing? Random duck, doesn't want to fly away, just wants to have a drink. Probably hungry as well. Tried to get him in the pool, but he's not interested. Weirdo.
One eternity later.
So, you can see the lower drawers are in. The more keen-eyed of you will notice that the bottom one's a little bit skew with. Not ideal. I've been through, turns out that it's actually the, essentially this part's too long by a little bit. And the box is too short. Everything's just not quite 100% square, and so you get a bit of that. Oop, can't see that one yet. So that's why it sticks out a bit, but that's okay. We can fix it with the actual face of the drawer, so I'm just going to work on that later. The top one, simple, just a box. Whoops. Just an empty box. Very easy to build. I already showed you how I put the corners together. Nice and easy. Same runners, exactly the same. Just all sits in there nicely. I put the top on, so I decided this is going to be the best way for me to move forward rather than a single piece. So having the top on here really helped to pull the walls of the cabinet square. So that's a separate piece because that will basically stay on there. And then when I build the wings, I've then just got these brackets that I've put on the side. They will support the top wing panel, and then it will obviously come out and meet to where the edge of the car is, and there'll just be like a carpeted buffer to hold it in place so it doesn't move. The wing uprights I'm going to do later as well. They're not 100% important right now, but I just want to get it to a stage where it can bolt into the car and then I don't have to keep it in the shed. The one for the fridge box has taken a little bit more work. The rear section's easy enough, but the idea being that, well, my idea was that to have the fridge in there, you'd pull it out most of the way or some of the way over the top of the tailgate, and then you could lift the lid. And the idea was that this front bit would be hinged, so you could lift it up. And you can see I've put those brackets and just cut them down to obviously stop this from falling completely. I did sort of try to bevel these edges a little bit just with the sander, just quickly to give a bit of a gap, but unfortunately it's not quite enough. And I don't want to do it too much more right now because, well, I can't afford having a huge gap. So that's a problem I will trust in myself to deal with later. So anyway, that lips to about there. It works. I've just got those hinges. There's obviously a stopper panel there, hinge there, just to hold it all in place. So it still works, just needs a little bit of refinement. But essentially that's it in terms of construction for now. The wings and stuff obviously will cut as needed, but everything else is going to be auxiliary things, so doing the water system, the 12 volt, and then obviously carpeting and finishing, doing your handles and as such. So anyway, we're going to deal with those later. Right now I've got to get this in the car because we moved house. How cool is this? Got a whole new patio to work under now. Big workshop behind you that you can't see, but we're going to go through that in probably the next video when you see me going through the rest of the mods I'm going to do to this thing. There it is, installed, well, temporarily installed in the 200. Looks great. Fridge fits well. Basically next step is going to be doing the fit out on the sides, so everything 12 volt. We've got your water, the water setup to go in there as well. Plus we're going to be doing the side panels. So K-On have actually been amazing and jumped on board to help this project as well. They are sending me out a set of their captive nut sets for the rear grab handles on the 200 series. For those that don't know, they're just sort of held in by plastic clips, so you can't really use them, but K-On have developed a kit so that you can use them. So that means that I am now going to have a vertical panel that I can build on either side really, to support if I want 12 volt gear up there or whatever. So that's really cool. That's opened up some really cool windows of opportunity. You're going to have to tune in next time to see where I go with all of that. So thank you very much for watching episode 2 of building your own DIY rear drawers. If you want to support the show even more, I've got patches and stickers available for purchase. I've also got t-shirts like these ones. I'm going to be doing another production run of those soon. So if you want to jump on board, grab yourself a t-shirt, show that you're a real off-road crusader. Or if you even want to support the show even further, there is also Patreon as well. So I'll leave links to all those things down in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you in the next episode. Cheers. And for those faithful few who have stuck around past the end credit scene, thought I'd just give you a bit of a sneak peek of this drawer. That opens right out. Lift up table. Slide out table. Bench space. Bench space. Well, I suppose storage space, but also bench space. Really cool. Can't wait to take it camping. Time to get this thing finished, hey? See you in the next one.